Coming up on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, my co-host Mikah Sargent, and three amazing guests. We talk about what we can expect at Apple's WWDC developer conference. Huawei's Android replacement is finally here. It's called HarmonyOS. We talk all about that. Don't throw out your old cathode ray tube, your CRT monitor, because it's hot with retro gamers right now. And we dive into the details of Twitter's new subscription service, Twitter Blue. All that and so much more coming up right now on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 186, recorded Thursday, June 3rd, 2021.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Command Line Heroes, a podcast that tells the epic, true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who are revolutionizing the technology landscape. Search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts and download it today. And by Casper. When it comes to a better night's sleep, Casper's new cooling collection has you covered. Focus on tomorrow, let Casper handle the rest. Explore Casper products, mattresses, sheets, pillows, and more at casper.com/twit1 and use code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses.
And by Udacity, gain in-demand tech skills in as little as 3 months with Udacity's part-time online tech courses. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with code TWIT75. Offer ends June 30th, 2021.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking all that tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I'm Jason Howell. And today is a first. We got every single person out in the world that is possibly making or breaking tech news. They're all on the show today. Every one of them.
All of them.
We're delivering on our promise today, Mikah.
Yes, we are, which means that there aren't that many people making and breaking tech news.
True.
But
to be honest, there's not much news today. But there you go.
That's what it is. That's what it is. But there is some news that's going to be coming up on Monday. Leo Laporte and I will take the stage. I will be back in the studio for the first time. Oh, how exciting! For nice. Apple's keynote at its WWDC conference. And so I thought, hey, might be a good idea to talk about what we can, can't, may, should, won't, don't expect to be at WWDC 2021. And who better than Six Colors' own Dan Moren. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a delight to be here breaking things. Or was it just news? Or was that the only thing we're breaking?
Well, we'll see by the end of it what is broken, what is not. Maybe a few hearts, a couple of knuckles. We'll get there. But let's talk about WWDC. So I think to kick things off, it is Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. And with that, it comes a certain understanding of what one can expect, which is software. And so I want to start there before we go into any kind of rumors and things like that. Let's talk about software. Obviously, we have the next versions of Apple's major platforms that will be announced. And kind of starting with the big one, iOS, do we have any early information about what might be coming in the next version of iOS and iPadOS? Is there anything that is kind of more expected or is in the tea leaves? And maybe the lack of rumors about the lack of too many rumors about software you could explain versus how there always seem to be these leaks on hardware.
Right. I mean, and we've seen leaks on software before, too, in the past. Oftentimes it's come from Apple itself through that, despite their best efforts to keep things under wraps. Sometimes information gets out. Last year, I think there was a pre-release build of iOS 14 that was sort of making the rounds shortly before WWDC. And as a result, a lot of the stuff that we were expecting kind of had already made it out into the ether, as it were. This year, there's definitely less. You're absolutely right. We've seen Apple tease a little bit of stuff that is, clearly things they didn't necessarily have time to talk about on stage. So, for example, last week, they talked about some accessibility features that would be showing up in the new watchOS version, and stuff that we can expect maybe a mention of, but perhaps just signaling that there's a lot of stuff to talk about. The big things that we're thinking that we might hear about this year, there have been some reports of a rethought notifications framework, perhaps providing more granularity for users about notifications. And then on the iPad side, it's kind of widely expected that it will gain some of the features that iOS got last year. So specifically the phone got like those abilities to have widgets on your home screen and the app library feature where you can remove apps and have them sort of taken off your home screen. And the iPad didn't really get any of that. The widgets were still sort of, left to this little column on the side. So a lot of people are expecting the iPad to sort of play catch up in one way or another, and perhaps revisit the home screen appearance after all these years and figure out some way to make that work even better for the iPad. And then beyond that, I think a lot of people are hoping for at least some addressing of the iPad's shortcomings when it comes to multitasking, which has been sort of a perennial complaint of iPad users. It's a great piece of hardware, but the software really doesn't keep up with it in the sense of letting people do the kind of work that they really want to get done.
Yeah. So certainly the iPad stuff was something that I was aware of, and I remember now those notifications that kind of creeping up earlier this year. But so with that kind of understood, what do we know about the hardware side of things? So Apple, again, at WWDC doesn't typically announce hardware, or it's kind of now a back and forth because some years they do, some years they don't. Are we expected to see hardware at this year's WWDC?
There is a lot of building consensus that the MacBook Pro, so the higher end of the MacBook Pro line, obviously when Apple redid the MacBook Pro last year to add the new Apple Silicon, the M1 chip, it did these sort of lower end MacBook Pro models. And so those were limited to just a couple ports, and they were limited to 16 gigabytes of RAM. And obviously, like you said up front, this is a developer-focused conference, which means the people that Apple's appealing to are the people doing a lot of work that's generally very demanding. And so the rumors seem to be coalescing around new MacBook Pros, probably a 14-inch model and a 16-inch model, though it's possible that one or even both of those could not appear. But that seems to be the most likely. Obviously, we just saw an iPad release, a few months ago, so certainly nothing to expect there. The iPhone release is always in the fall, certainly nothing to expect there. And so everything that we're probably going to see would be probably related to the Mac one way or another. And there's a few other wild cards floating around out there, like a higher end Mac Mini. And obviously we saw the 24-inch iMac redesign. A larger iMac probably in the cards. I wouldn't bet on it for WWDC, but it's still floating around out there somewhere.
So let's go back to the software rumors, because now that we've kind of we've laid the base of everything, I want to go back to the notifications, because that is actually an ongoing conversation that I've seen from folks who have tasted Android and have been on the Android platform and have enjoyed about Android, is the kind of robust control over notifications and sort of being able to tool things individually. Can you talk a little bit about the rumors about notifications in iOS 15? What exactly they're expected to bring? Because I think this was like a Bloomberg report, so it was relatively detailed, actually.
Right. And so, this is Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg, who has very good sources. And some of the things that we're expected to see are things like the ability to create different sort of profiles. So, for example, being able to say, like, right now you can already set, your do not disturb, for example, and you can choose like whether you're going to get certain phone calls or whatever. This might, like you said, like sort of like statuses essentially, like, and so you can choose like if you're driving or you're working or sleeping, or even if you define a custom category, and then you can decide like what behaviors will happen in this particular case. Will messages get auto responded to saying, hey, I'm, not available right now? And that's something that's been available for a long time in certain driving modes with the iPhone, but not sort of more broadly speaking. And so other options might be to, for example, use sort of things like do not disturb and sleep mode to sort of also be able to define like what happens, how are notifications treated, like incoming notifications treated when you're asleep and what have you. So I think it's probably that the challenge for Apple is Android provides a huge granularity of like addressing notifications, and Apple, obviously, that's just not their aesthetic, their design, the way they handle things. They like to be a little more selective. And so I wouldn't expect the same sort of unbridled control necessarily to get on Android, but it seems like what we're looking for is something a step above what's already there.
Awesome. Now, there was kind of a strange thing that happened where Apple, even before WWDC took place, or even before kind of some of the place where they announce things typically, they went ahead and previewed some stuff that is coming to the next version of iOS because it was Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And Apple announced a whole slew of upcoming things that will be hitting iOS in the next version. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that, particularly in relation to the Apple Watch, which hopefully John can show the video when it comes time. Because there's some pretty mind-blowing accessibility stuff happening with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, Apple has always had sort of best-in-class assistive technologies. I think most people would agree. They've spent a lot of time on being able to accommodate all sorts of differently abled people when it comes to interacting with their devices. So this is only an expansion from that. And among the things that they talked about are, as you mentioned on the Apple Watch, this idea of assistive touch. And so for people who may not be able to interact with the screen on the Apple Watch for whatever reason, it's a way of using the sort of built-in sensors, including the gyroscope and the accelerometer, to control things on the watch with just one hand. And so it's kind of amazing. I mean, there is this video on Apple's site that you should definitely check out, but just by like sort of squeezing your hand or moving parts, certain fingers, you can sort of switch where the cursor goes and essentially choose what you're doing with like different actions. It's just the ability to sort of dismiss notifications or interact at all with this obviously very touch focused device with using only the hand that it's actually on, which is pretty incredible. And then in addition to that, we also have things like eye tracking support for the iPad, which is, for people who just, need the ability to control an iPad using like just their eyes. And so, devices that are capable of doing that will have support in the OS. There's the ability to basically for blind and low vision users who are looking at like images that have sort of like a voiceover, which is Apple's technology for describing things or interacting by voice, will have the ability to potentially like describe what's going on in images if they're tagged and set up correctly, and even navigate through them. So if it's like an image of a receipt, you could go right through like a table and it would like read out various parts of it. So a lot of these features, are aimed at a wide slew of like cases where people might need accessible features. Background sounds, for example, for people who find things overwhelming. It's like a way to help people become more calm and stay focused, et cetera. I mean, it really is kind of an incredible amount of stuff. And as we talked about, the fact that they talked about it earlier than WWDC suggests like, hey, this is really important stuff. We want to highlight it, but we may not have time during our keynote presentation to go through all of these features in detail.
I love Apple's commitment to accessibility. And you were talking about the watch, the like hands-free kind of watch controls. And what that reminds me of is at least on the Android or / Google side, I don't know if you both are familiar with Project Soli. Soli is the kind of like a proximity radar. Let's say it was in the Pixel 4 XL, so you could do like music controls without touching the phone, that sort of stuff. When they initially showed off Soli, they showed off an interface where without having to touch the watch, they showed it off on a smartwatch. You could have your hand over the smartwatch and be doing different controls, like rotating through the carousel by moving your finger like that, or that sort of stuff. And this is just one of those areas where Apple is showing how it can do something along those same lines, but it can really make it a mainstream kind of acceptable, capable system where Google like takes in the case of Soli, it's taken years for it to find a place. It didn't really work on the Pixel 4 XL. People were kind of confused by it mostly. Now it's in, I think, some Nest devices. But Apple, like, that's amazing. I love that they've figured that out, and I just wanted to make that comment. I love how Apple approaches accessibility. Google has made some inroads there, but Apple has proven year after year just how committed they are to it.
And I think one of the magical things about it is the way that this technology makes its way into the rest of the ecosystem. It's like Apple into the rest of Apple's own ecosystem. So Rene Ritchie had touched on this before. Cursor support was an accessibility feature first, and now it is a feature that is part of the iPad Pro experience if you connect it to a trackpad or a mouse. There are some other things where it started in accessibility and then suddenly it became a part of the iOS experience as a whole as people take advantage of it. And there are some thoughts that perhaps this cursor support could, or not cursor support, but assistive touch on the watch could become something that gets used elsewhere. It certainly reminds me of on an Oculus hand controls too, and pinching to select things. So we'll see. But other than that, were there any big things that we can expect from WWDC, or maybe some things that you are hoping to expect from WWDC as we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple things that I'm really interested in. And I think some of them are sort of presaged by the announcements we've seen from Apple over the past couple of months. For example, when they rolled out the iPad Pro, they showed that it has the external display support. It's got a Thunderbolt port on it now. You can plug in Apple's very, very expensive Apple Pro Display XDR to an iPad, which left a lot of people wondering, well, why? What could you do with that? There's not a lot of support in the iPad OS right now for using external displays other than outside of a small number of video apps and being able to mirror your display, which obviously it's overkill to buy a $6,000 display for that. So is there another shoe left to drop on that when it comes to external display support? And then I know Mikah and I are probably both very interested in hearing more about Matter, which is this grown out of this Project Chip home alliance between all of these different big tech players about sort of revamping smart home tech and finding ways to make all of those different platforms work together. It's sort of had a bigger push in recent months. They've rebranded. They've announced that there's accessories coming later this year, and Apple's built Thread radios, which are little smart home wireless chips into the HomePod Mini and its latest Apple TV, suggesting that there's something to come there. There was even this week a leak about an Apple job description that included something called HomeOS, which has left a lot of people wondering, well, what's that all about? So I'm really keeping an eye on the smart home stuff in particular. I think Apple's going to potentially have more to talk about in that space.
Absolutely. Well, Dan Moren of Six Colors, thank you so much for joining us today. If folks want to follow you online and check out all your great work, where do they go to do that?
Well, thanks for having me. You can find me at sixcolors.com, where I write about all sorts of Apple stuff, as well as at dmoren on Twitter and my own website at dmoren.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dan. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Up next, Huawei launched its own operating system for its Android devices. Can you even call them that anymore? Android devices? I don't know. We're going to find out. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by the incredible, the excellent, the awesome Command Line Heroes. Command Line Heroes, it's a podcast that shares with you the epic true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who have and still are revolutionizing the technology landscape. And by the way, season 7 is out now. Season 7 of Command Line Heroes is such an interesting one because it explores a year that may not at first glance seem like an important one, but it is. It was a pivotal year. It was 1995. The year was 1995. It was the start of the dot-com boom, but a lot of things had to come together for the internet to succeed. So meet the internet class of 95. Now, we go to GoDaddy. Some people go to Google Domains and they grab a domain name. It's super simple process. But there was a woman you'd have to call back in the day before you could go to these sites and purchase a domain name. Elizabeth Jake Feinler was the keeper of all domains. What a cool thing. Episode 1 of the season features a conversation with the woman herself, now in her 90s, about how she managed the internet and how her team needed to create the DNS. Now, web design took a while to become a career. Now you can say, yes, I'm a web designer. But back in the day, it was not quite there yet. And it got a big boost in 95 when the Batman Forever website launched to promote the movie. It showed people what was possible on the web. This episode features pioneers like Jeffrey Zeldman, considered the godfather of web design, who recount the shift that forever changed the face of the web. And by the way, a new search engine launched in 95 that took the world by storm. It had a number of firsts: a fast and advanced web crawler, whole page translation from a number of different languages back into English, and something called Flypaper. Hear how Alta Vista was the first search engine for the 21st century. 1995 was a pivot point, the moment when the internet went from academic curiosity to global phenomenon. Command Line Heroes is hosted by developer and podcaster Sargent Barek, and we here at TWiT got a sneak peek, a sneak preview of season 7. And you can really learn so much. And one of the things that I always like to touch on is the beautiful artwork over on Command Line Heroes website. They, for each of their seasons, they design these beautiful sites with incredible graphics that let you kind of get a glimpse at the individual folks that are being covered, the subjects that are being covered. And it's all designed in 1995 web style. It's really clever. And I there's something about these episodes. We've had several listeners now tell us that I play these episodes for my kids, and me and my kids and I, we all sit around and listen to these episodes, and I'm reminded of things and learn new things, and then they're completely learning new things. And it's really, if anybody who loves to know new information, I think you're going to love Command Line Heroes. And there are 7 seasons of it, so there's so much to check out. You can check out all of the incredible stories from season 7 and before today. Search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Command Line Heroes. Download it today. Our thanks to Command Line Heroes for their support of this show, and of course, for the support of TWiT. All righty, take it away, Jason.
All right. Well, it's been 2 years. I kind of couldn't believe that when I read that in this article. 2 years since Huawei had its big falling out with the U.S. government. Ultimately, that resulted in a ban of the company from doing any business with U.S. companies and U.S. supply chain and everything. So Huawei's been through the ringer trying to kind of redesign its business, especially as related to its Android business. Very successful in the Android space up until this point. This changed everything as far as how Huawei would manage its business, and and find supply for all of the components and everything that go into its smartphones. So, in order to control their mobile devices on a deeper level, the company just launched its in-house operating system officially. It's called HarmonyOS, and Ben Schoon from 9 to 5 Google is here to talk all about it. Ben, it's great to get you on this show. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Had you on All About Android a number of times. So first time on Tech News Weekly. You will notice with TNW that it's much shorter than an hour and a half. So at least there's that. Let's talk first about this new OS, of course. Is it a mischaracterization to say that this is a brand new OS? Because it is, after all, underlying, all of it is Android underneath, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag. Huawei, proudly came out on stage to say, hey, this is a brand new thing that we made ourselves. But it's some of the reviewers who have had access to some of the new hardware, it's pretty clear that it's Android still. And they've made some modifications to Android, but they didn't really build any of it from scratch. So it's not really a brand new operating system as much as it is a tweaked version of Android that better suits their needs.
Okay. All right. So I guess then what I'm trying to understand is how this version of Android and what Huawei is doing with Harmony OS satisfies the export ban requirements more than the phones did when they weren't running Harmony OS, when they were running another, like it almost seems like, okay, before we were running a skin on Android, and now we've released a new skin on Android. And I don't know where the differences lie there. What can you tell me about that?
Well, that's not the worst summary, but really the biggest thing here is like that really matters for Huawei is that this just lets them kind of stand out as independent. It makes them look more independent. But underlying, it also probably helps them in terms of Android, even open source AOSP Android is still kind of reliant to work well with apps if it's needing Google Play services and things like that. So by forking Android is what a tweak to this caliber would be called, just gives them more flexibility on that point.
Okay. And after being hamstrung for the last couple of years, I'm sure they appreciate having a little bit more flexibility as far as that's concerned. Now, Huawei announced that Harmony OS is meant to unify its code base between its smartphones and its IoT devices and whatever other devices. It really seems like Huawei's leaning into the idea that, we've created Harmony OS to be a servicer of all things, and there's no other operating system doing this right now. But I can think of a lot of operating systems that kind of seem like they're doing that. Is that accurate to say? It seems, Android at its core really seems to be this, but what's the difference, if any?
Yeah, so if they all did really share the same code base underneath, then yeah, that would definitely be pretty new and different. Because even Android is really just the same operating system on like phones, tablets, and watches. But then if you go to like a smart display, even if it's running Android things, it's not really the same software. Right. And like one of the things that Ron from Ars Technica pointed out was that Harmony OS on a phone or a tablet is Android, but on the smartwatches, like the ones that they released, it's actually Light OS, which is what they were using beforehand too. And they didn't, obviously we don't know what it would be on an IoT device yet, but they're not really the same code base, or if they are, it's not the whole code base. Really what their pitch and their description is closer to what Google's been working on for Fuchsia than it is for what Harmony OS is.
Interesting. Yeah, that actually rings true. The more that I think about it, that seems like a really apt comparison. Okay. And yeah, that's a good point that you make. Like Android, like when I think of Android, I think of like all different kinds of devices, obviously smartphones, tablets, but IoT devices, yes. Wearables, yes, refrigerators, all these different things, and they're all said to be running Android. But you're right; they're different, more modified versions. Maybe it's a light version of Android over here. Android Wear is not the same as Android OS on a smartphone, so there are those differences. And if Huawei is truly doing that here, I suppose that would be something new. So props to them for that potentially. Now, based on what you've seen of the OS in action, a lot of these different sites that had access to the device showing off kind of like the UI and everything. What stands out to you as far as how it differs from what Huawei was offering before, but perhaps from what we're used to seeing? Or is it kind of same, just different?
It's kind of the same. It's a phone or a tablet operating system, which is pretty typical. You can't really differentiate it too much, otherwise it feels foreign. But one of the demos that I thought was very cool and is definitely a little more advanced than even like what Apple does on their tightly integrated devices was pulling a running app from a phone to a tablet. So they had a demo of a game that was running on a smartphone, and they just pulled it over to the tablet and kept going from where they left off. And that's pretty unique. And if that actually works, that's awesome. But I don't think we've seen that in action on anything aside from a demo yet.
Yeah, right. In an animated GIF. Now you point out that Huawei has been sending mixed signals to different media outlets, as at least in regards to the use of resources in how they created HarmonyOS, telling you one thing, telling another publication nothing about that. What's your take on why that might be? Is this just a messaging issue, or is Huawei? I mean, what do you think that points to?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, a big part of it right now is just that Huawei wants to look independent with HarmonyOS.
Yeah.
And they want to say, we can do this all on our own. But if they were truly doing it on their own, if they had just built this up from scratch, pulling in some third-party things, there really wouldn't be miscommunication. But like last week, I was told very specifically Linux was used in the development. But then when TechCrunch asked about it this week, Huawei wouldn't provide an answer. When asked if it was Android, they told TechCrunch that not a single line of AOSP was in HarmonyOS. But then they told another publication that they pulled from AOSP to make it feel familiar. So if it was truly their own thing, there would not be miscommunication to this level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Very, very confusing there. I know one thing that I read about is that Huawei released a list of kind of some of their legacy Huawei devices of over the past couple of years that are going to be at some point in the next year probably upgraded automatically to HarmonyOS. And I guess what kind of struck me about that is, okay, so that is potentially a major shift from one to the other on these devices. I mean, are there complications that could arise in that, or have they addressed that at all? Like what a user might expect if and when that happens?
I haven't seen them address it at all, but let's say that HarmonyOS truly is this brand new platform. It's not Android. Swapping that out through an over-the-air update, which is what they would surely ask people to do, would be potentially disastrous. When Google replaced the operating system on the Nest Hub with Fuchsia last month, one person compared that to replacing the engine in a car while it's driving down the highway with people inside and them having no idea. And that presents a lot of room for error. But if they're moving just from one version of Android to a modified version of Android, in theory, they should be able to pull that off with no issues. But at the same time, any update can cause issues. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, you just never know. I suppose if on the underlying system it is Android, then at least I would assume that if someone had a certain list of apps installed, hopefully it doesn't mean that suddenly those apps go away and you can't get to them again, something along those lines. So at least I would imagine if Android is running underneath, those apps would still work on the new OS, but I guess we just don't know until that happens. And then speaking about devices, Huawei also announced a few devices along with this HarmonyOS news. Did anything in your mind stand out specifically? Are these devices that are intended to come to the US at some point? What do you know about those?
Well, Huawei is still under ban, so they definitely won't be coming to the US anytime soon. Mm-hmm. Damien over at 9to5 Google reviewed the new smartwatch, which looks nice. I thought the tablets looked really nice, but it's kind of hard to get on board with any of their stuff since they don't have Google apps. Yeah.
That is the huge limiting factor, and the thing that Huawei really, probably does not want you to know about because they want to be able to sell these devices. But that is the elephant in the room when it comes to their devices is, okay, but you're not going to be able to run, you're not going to be able to run the Play Store. The Google apps especially are going to be, they're going to hurt the device to not have that on there. Well, I'll be curious to see how this all plays out. I remember a couple of years ago when everything was going down phone. And Huawei, the news and the leaks was that Huawei had already been working on their own OS and that they'd be coming out with it soon. I can't believe that 2 years has passed by and here we are. But I applaud Huawei for doing what can be a very difficult task, creating an OS and launching it, especially after their reliance on what we have experienced with Android on Huawei devices. So be curious to see what they come up with. Ben Schoon, of course, 9to5google.com. If people want to follow you online, where can they find you? And also talk a little bit about your podcast.
Well, I'm at Nexus Ben on Twitter, and you can tune in to Alphabet Scoop. That's our podcast at 9to5Google, where we'll cover all the Google news of the week. We're actually going to be talking about Harmony OS again in this week's episode, and that goes up every Thursday and or Friday.
I'm sure you will. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Later.
Thank you, Ben. Up next, we're going to take a trip down nostalgia lane. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by My Good Night's Sleep. It's Casper. Love your tomorrow with Casper. The new Casper Cooling Collection has everything you need to help you sleep cool all night long. And let me tell you, sleeping cool is incredibly important. Casper's mattresses with new snow technology, hyperlight sheets, lightweight duvets, and breathable mattress protector are all designed to keep you cool and comfortable so you can't help but love your tomorrow. Tomorrow is a new day, so you should make the most of it with Casper's new cooling collection. There's Casper's Wave Hybrid Snow Mattress, which keeps you cool for 12 plus hours, pulling heat away from your body for sustained temperature regulation, a cool to the touch feeling, and a much improved tomorrow. And better bedding makes for a better tomorrow, which is why Casper's Hyperlight Sheets are designed with an innovative grid weave that lets air flow through for maximum breathability. The new lightweight duvet provides optimal temperature control without sacrificing plush comfort. Casper's breathable mattress protector improves the coolness of the bed even further, which is really cool. Sometimes mattress protectors kind of make things worse. Nah, this one improves the coolness even further by allowing air to flow between your body and the mattress. All of these are designed to work together to prevent overheating all night, because cooler sleep means better sleep, and better sleep means better tomorrows. I've got so many Casper products, and they're just near and dear to me, because they help me get a good night's sleep. Casper sheets, Casper pillows, Casper bed, Casper box spring, Casper foundation, all that jazz, all Casper. Because I got a Casper long ago and I laid down on it, and it was revelatory. Absolutely. And as always, Casper offers free shipping and free returns. When it comes to a better night's sleep, Casper's new cooling collection has you covered. Focus on tomorrow and let Casper handle the rest. Explore Casper products, mattresses, sheets, pillows, and more at casper.com/twit1. That's the number 1. And use code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. That's code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. Exclusions apply. See casper.com for more details. Thanks so much to Casper for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. And Jason, back to you.
I love this story. This is so great. I'm just a huge fan of tech nostalgia. So this one's perfect for me. If you hadn't known that your old, or if you had known rather, that your old CRT monitor, you remember those before LCDs and all the fancy new, HD TVs and everything. You had CRT cathode ray tube monitors, and this is just the classic TV set that we've had for generations, basically. Well, now they're becoming a hot commodity. In 2021, apparently, if you had held on to it, you'd be pretty popular with certain types of friends anyways. And Aidan Moher from Wired is here to talk about exactly why those old beastly screens, those huge, heavy screens, are in high demand right now. It's great to have you on the show, Aidan. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. It's good to see you. So first, before we get to kind of why these monitors are experiencing a renaissance right now, go ahead and take a moment and tell me about that hot tech TV that you have in your townhouse. I almost envision it like you're reviewing this new TV that you got. Meanwhile, it's like, decades old. But what do you have there?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said in my article, you walk into my house, my living room looks pretty typical, right? I've got my big flat screen TV, 4K TV in the living room. Nobody's going to notice that. But you walk upstairs into my family room and you will absolutely notice the two tube TVs that I have sitting in my little entertainment unit, because they're so unusual in this day and age and they take up so much space. And so I wanted to, talk about this. Why do I have these and why are they relevant almost 15 years after the last ones came off the production line? And it's all about experiencing old retro video games, Super Nintendo, PlayStation games in the way that they were originally consumed. There are great options for playing those games on your flat screen, whether it's through an upscaler that you plug your original consoles into, or bespoke devices like the analog Super NT. But combining original hardware, original software, and original display devices just gives you that high-end authentic experience that I really enjoy.
Oh, yeah. And you just think about, I think about 15 years ago when my then big screen, CRT TV, which at this point I can't remember what qualified as big screen back then, 15 or 20 years ago. But I mean, it was a big box. That thing was, I could hardly even move it myself. It was so huge and heavy. So when I was able to upgrade to something that was still huge but way lighter, I was happy to get rid of that thing, kick it to the curb. I driving around town, when I was living in San Francisco, saw these old TV sets on the curb all the time, and yet here we are. They're in demand. So who the heck knows how this stuff works? But this is the way it goes, and it's all, like you said, it's all about retro gaming. I actually have a MAME cabinet downstairs. A fan of the network actually helped me build it years ago, and I chose to put an LCD monitor in there just because it was cheap. It made sense. I could get it, and make room for it. And as much as I enjoy gaming on that setup, I do miss, I actively miss the kind of the feeling of the CRT. What exactly makes the CRT so appealing in this situation?
Yeah, the technology behind CRTs, like the cathode ray tube, is just really interesting as a display technology. It's old too. It's old technology, but the way it sort of reached its peak over the period of its invention to when we stopped using it meant that it was also a really mature technology. And we're going through that growing phase with, LCD or OLED screens now. And so when you get these old TVs, you're playing games that were designed to be viewed with that technology, and they took the limitations of that technology and actually kind of turned them into an asset. And so a lot of these old pixel-based games or early 3D-based games expect the raw image to be, blurred and blended and adjusted by the CRT technology. And so when you have 270 lines of graphics running across a screen that's 480, double the resolution sort of, there's blank spaces and your mind fills that in. The brightness of the screen in lighter colors helps fill that in, and it creates an effect that enhances the pixel art that we loved so much. And there's a beauty in raw pixel art, especially modern raw pixel art, that's really kind of taken the idea of bringing that medium into the high definition. But the old stuff, you look at old pictures or videos of video game developers, and they're sitting there in front of a CRT, and what they're drawing, they expect to be shown on a CRT with that sort of that technology, and being able to experience that now is just there's just something really warm and inviting about it, I think.
Yeah, especially after the many years that we've allowed ourselves to get accustomed to the sharp crispness of an LCD and, modern HD TVs. So I imagine it's kind of just as it is fun to kind of go back from the nostalgic place and play those old games, to do that and also see it represented authentically based on what we remember them to be, is just taking that a step further. How do you feel about kind of the emulation of these scan lines? I know I'm not a huge fan. I usually keep them off, but what are your thoughts there? Are there any systems, modern systems, that do that well enough? It's just not the same.
Yeah, I think so. It's not the same. It's different, but I think it's also still applicable. And that's how I actually got into like retro games again. I'm in my late 30s. I've been playing games since the Nintendo, but I was mostly focusing on modern games until a few years ago. And that's when I started like dipping my toe into emulation, and then that led to scanline shaders within emulators, and some of them work better than others. But just like CRTs, it all comes down to taste too. And there's no real right way or wrong way to use that. And so in emulators, you can, have it look a lot like a CRT, or you can just bring in a light scanline effect. If you want to use your original consoles, or you want to play on your flat screen without having to run it through an emulator or a computer, like, you can buy an upscaler like the OSSC or the recently released RetroTink 5, and that's going to take the original analog signal from your console, your Super Nintendo, and upscale it to fit your flat screen and give you all sorts of options. You can have like crystal clear pixels. You can also add scan lines in there during that process, that upscaling process. And they're super tweakable. So if you want a really light scanline effect, you can get that. If you want something that's really heavy and emulates like a high-end Sony professional video monitor, you can get that too. And so one of the nice things about the options, the non-CRT options, is just flexibility for users. It won't match, in my opinion, it doesn't match the experience of actually playing on a CRT, but it'll get you most of the way there, especially if you don't want or don't have the room for a big bulky CRT.
Yeah, or you can't find them. So you point out in your article that CRTs are definitely experiencing a renaissance in the digital marketplace. And they're going for a lot of money at this point. Can I talk about that a little bit? How hard are these to find? How much money are we talking about here? It just kind of blows my mind, but tell me about that.
Yeah. So I think, as we've seen with almost all material goods over the course of the pandemic, especially, there's been an increase in demand. From people. Or is it because people are stuck at home? Is it because of just, the value of material goods? All of that kind of feeds into this. But there has been a huge increase in demand. As I talked about in my article, you've seen subreddits like CRT gaming growing exponentially. You've seen the price of high-end computer monitors, CRT computer monitors, going up by 4 times on eBay. There was one listing that I talked about in my article, and a couple of years ago, the monitor went for $999, and at the time of writing the article, there was a listing on eBay with a buy it now price of $4,000. Now that is like the cream of the crop Sony monitor. So that's not normal. You're not going to be paying $4,000 for a CRT, or at least you probably shouldn't be. We're not yet at the point where you can't go on to Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or wherever and find somebody who's giving away their old CRT TV for free. Come pick it up. I'll give it to you for free. Or they're listing it for $20. That's where people should start if they want to test out CRTs. Some of these TVs are getting old. A lot of them were built like bricks. They're well built. They might need some work inside to replace capacitors, but for the most part, a lot of them are still in pretty good shape. But each CRT is different. Even if it's the same model of TV, one next to the other might look different. And so, you're not going to want to necessarily take a gamble right off the bat without knowing what it is that you're looking for or what you want as well. We're starting to see people listing CRTs on Facebook Marketplace, and they'll put retro gaming or whatever, or rare in the title, try to sell it for $200. It's, they're just trying to kind of get at people who are capitalize and stuff. And so you shouldn't be paying those prices yet. There's still a lot of CRTs out there. Drive around your neighborhood on a garbage or a recycling weekend or something. Like in my town, there's one weekend every year where everybody's encouraged to put their stuff on those sidewalk and, drive around, look around your neighborhood, go to garage sales and stuff. You'll probably still find tubes that you can get for free or $5 or whatever. That's the place to start. The best tube you can get is the one that you can get.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And not to mention there's a little bit of a bonus here for environmental aspects of everything as well. These things take up an insane amount of space in landfills. I love seeing this because it truly does mean that these things that very recently, up until recently, have been seen as total junk and destined for a landfill, now suddenly they have the possibility of getting an extra life out of this kind of passion of nostalgia. So that's great as well. One final thing that I want to mention before we go is lag, input lag. You mentioned that there's a difference in input lag. How perceptible is that? Like, I feel like at this point, we've been gaming on the modern systems now, and a lot of these TV sets have systems inside of them to reduce input lag. But we've kind of adjusted how we play based on these systems now. Going back to a CRT and playing that way, how perceptible is that to you?
I'm not personally that picky about input lag. I don't notice it as much, but I don't play competitive and faster games. I'm mostly playing Japanese RPGs. So you don't notice them in
not
those
as
games.
Not as much need there.
Yeah. And to be, I also haven't played a lot of retro games on a flat screen as well. And so I just avoided it because it hasn't been a great experience for so long. And that's getting better. A lot of the games now, like you say, they're designed specifically to be played on flat screens, understanding that there is going to be some input delay. TVs are made with game mode, so it turns off as much post-processing as possible. We're getting there. It's getting better with flat screens. But when it comes to actual competitive gameplay, so if you're playing older games like Super Smash Brothers, competitive players, swear by these CRTs because there's, imperceptible input lag. And that's how the games were designed to be played. They were never expected to be played with noticeable input lag, and that creates a big competitive advantage if you're used to playing on CRTs over flat screens.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I love that you wrote this story. It made me smile. I love all of this nostalgia around retro gaming. As much as I was a big gamer back in the day, and then I took a very long break. And as much as I put my toes back in the water of modern gaming now, it's fun. I found some games that I really, truly do enjoy, but nothing quite brings me like that smile on my face and that total enjoyment as checking out some of these retro games. And so this, I don't even know where I would put a bulky CRT in this house right now. There's just no space for it. But if I could, I'd totally be doing this because I think I would totally appreciate it. And I love that you appreciate it. So Aidan Moher, I hope I'm saying your last name. I meant to ask you about that. But Wired.com is where you're writing for here, but you write for a lot of different publications. Tell people where they can find your work.
Yeah, I write at various places across the web, Wired most recently. I run a newsletter called Astrolabe, where you can find that at astrolabe.aidanmoher.com. That's probably the best place to find my most recent writing. I link out to all of my freelance pieces there. And I had a piece recently at Input Mag as well, which goes into some of the options available to gamers who want to play on their flat screens and optimize the look of their old games, whether they're playing on flat screens or CRTs as well.
Excellent. Great addendum to this topic as well. So, Aidan, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. This was awesome. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Up next, Mikah is going to talk all about Twitter Blue. It is official. We have information about Twitter's subscription service, and we'll see whether it's something that we might one day want to sign up for, because we can't yet. But anyways, we're going to talk about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Udacity. Udacity offers just an incredibly unique part-time online education program that's really geared for those who are looking to take their tech knowledge, to the next level with specialized and exciting content. Udacity is awesome. They cover the gamut here. Offers the latest cutting-edge nano-degree programs, many of which are not even available anywhere else. So you've got AI, deep learning, flying car and autonomous flight engineer, intro to self-driving cars, machine learning engineer, and robotics software engineer. And that's just like scratching the surface. To create the course content, Udacity actually partners with industry leaders. So we're talking Microsoft, Google, IBM, AWS, and a whole lot more, and then selects team leads at top companies to be the instructors. So these are people that know their stuff. If you love learning and you're always looking to know more new tech stuff, especially, Udacity has it for you. Udacity can help you master the latest tech skills, the latest techniques. Courses are project-based, which is awesome because it gets you engaged. You're not just sitting there passively watching something. It's active learning that covers cutting-edge technology. It lets you test your knowledge. Homework and projects are reviewed by qualified professionals. So you get a real human touch, real human feedback and reviews, and you have access to mentors 24/7. And Udacity's flexible schedules mean you can put in, just 5 to 10 hours a week, whatever amount of time you can find, working at your own pace any time of the day or night, and you can graduate in as little as 3 months. The World Economic Forum actually estimates that 75 million jobs are going to be replaced by automated processes over the next 3 years. And Udacity prepares its students for the jobs of the future. Over 14 million people in more than 240 countries now use Udacity. And you can check out their detailed course listings. All you have to do is go to udacity.com and get lost in the course listings and, daydream a little bit as far as what you want to take. Once you enroll as a student in a specific course offering, you're going to be prompted to view the online course as well as complete a series of projects and support courses, all that stuff. And they offer flexible payment options so you can learn at your own pace, your own schedule. And by the way, if you want to just try it out and see what it's all about, Udacity does have free courses for you to try. Does your team need to master cutting-edge technologies, things like data science, AI, and cybersecurity? Well, Udacity for Enterprise, you can use that to upskill your entire workforce with real-world project-based learning. You'll want to be sure to check out the Enterprise section of Udacity's website today as well. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career. All you got to do is go to udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program. 75% off. That's a huge discount with code TWIT75. TWIT75. Offer ends June 30th, 2021. That's udacity.com/twit, and make sure and enter TWIT75 as the offer code, and you'll get 75% off any program. Check it out for yourself. We thank Udacity for their support of Tech News Weekly and the TWiT network. All right, Mikah, what can you tell us about this Twitter Blue thing?
So there's long been, a rumor or rumors that Twitter was planning on announcing a subscription service of some sort. And we didn't quite know what it was at first. And then on Twitter, I should remember the Twitter account because this person routinely posts. They do the thing that a lot of tech journalists / developers do, or several, I should say, tech journalists / developers do, which is they go into the app code for different apps and they look at what has changed, what's new, what's different. And then by doing that, they are able to find hints about what might be coming and what the developers might be working on. And so Jane Wong on Twitter is a great follow if you're wanting to see what apps and services are working on, particularly if you want to see what Twitter is working on, because she was the first one to post about Twitter launching, testing some subscription stuff that later became Twitter Blue. What's funny is that the way that Twitter Blue was rolled out, or was kind of even more revealed, was because Twitter rolled out an app update to the iOS App Store. And one of the things that happens in the App Store is you can go to any app entry and scroll down on the app page, and you can see the in-app purchases that are available within the app. Well, Twitter updated its app, and on its App Store page, there was a line item for Twitter Blue for $2.99 or something like that. And so then people were like, Twitter has confirmed without confirming that Twitter Blue is happening. And now they have confirmed with confirming that Twitter Blue is happening as of today, Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. Twitter has announced and introduced Twitter Blue. So with Twitter Blue, the idea here is that there are some people who are Twitter power users, people who are on Twitter all day, every day, and love Twitter and want to use more of Twitter. I know that's a shock for some folks, and even amongst those of us who jokingly say that I've been on this hell site for 7 years, but we keep using it. Same thing here. I was a little surprised that there were, these different power users, but I am honestly considering subscribing to this, A, because I do want to keep this service alive, and B, because there are some interesting things. So let's start at the top. First is bookmark folders. So on Twitter, it used to be that the way that people saved their content was by tapping the like button. But over time, for a lot of people, myself included, the like button has turned into a bit of a read receipt. And so you can sort of say, oh, I saw that and I acknowledge it and thank you, or I acknowledge it and I laughed, or whatever, without having to necessarily reply. And because that happened, folks who wanted to have a way to bookmark stuff on Twitter, it was getting mixed up in their I acknowledge that I've seen this tweet list. And so Twitter introduced bookmarks. And this was the bookmark feature alone was a while back, so that you could have two separate things. You could do your likes that say, I've seen this, and you could also have bookmarks for content that you want to find again. Now with Twitter Blue, you can organize those bookmarks into separate folders. So on Twitter, Twitter's blog posts, they show some bookmarks for funny, threads, cute, movies /books /podcasts, and things to buy. So you could very easily see that you could start to get those organized. I was just thinking about people who have newsletters where they include a section that is, funny tweets they saw that week. This would be a great way to be able to save those very easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Without having to use a third-party service or something like that. And for me, it's I have ones for like, show this to my partner, or again, the things to buy is definitely one of mine for sure. Sure. So those are all on there. Then the next one, which is what I call the peacemaker. And I don't know if it's actually going to make peace or if it's going to have folks just pushing even more for this to happen, but undo tweet. Now, here's how undo tweet works, because when I first heard about undo tweet, I thought, okay, but I can just read my tweet before I send it, which is something that a lot of people don't do, which you should. And sometimes I fall, I mess that up too. But I am a person, this is an aside, this is a total aside, but I am a person who has absolutely no qualms with deleting a tweet that has an error in it. If it has an error and I don't want it there, I delete it. There's some folks have this, like, I can't delete any tweets that I put out. And so then they just complain about having or being unable to delete tweets. I don't understand that. Just, it's okay. You can delete the tweet and start over. But anyway, so I thought, how is undo tweet actually, worthwhile? And here's how it works. First of all, you can set a time limit up to 30 seconds. So it's a customizable timer up to 30 seconds that before the tweet actually gets sent, you have those 30 seconds to edit it, undo, but by undoing it to make an adjustment, or you can tap send now if you're ready to send it off. But what it does is it takes you from that compose screen and it shows your tweet kind of how it would look in the app. So it does kind of shift your mind, shift your frame of reference, and then you're able to kind of look at the tweet and see it in its final form. And that's often when people end up cutting it, because interestingly, the way that our brains work, our brains are magical, but sometimes they're working against us. And one way that they are both magical and working against us is when it comes to copy editing. Our brains are really good at autocorrect. And so that's why they have those long passages. Sometimes you can find they used to get sent in emails. Back in the day, we got chain emails, but now you can just see the posts on different social media sites where the letters in a word are all rearranged, but you can still read the whole phrase. You can still read the whole paragraph. Our brains are really good at autocorrect. And so context switching, I learned this from my copy editor as I was learning to become one. Context switching is very helpful to undoing or temporarily pausing the autocorrect in our brains. So going from that compose screen where your brain may get used to it and then autocorrect any errors that you make, because your brain is the one that's sort of developing the phrase as your sentence or whatever your sentence is and putting it in there. So it reads it and expects to see the thing that it just created. And so it's more likely that you'll autocorrect. But seeing it in that different context of how it'll eventually look, that's why most of the time we do catch our own errors, because we're seeing it in a different context. And then we're going, oh no, I forgot to put a comma there, or oh, I used the wrong to, or what have you. So undo tweet, I actually think is worth value, has some value to it.
I completely agree. Do you use undo send in Gmail, the setting? Yeah. Yeah.
So I use Spark Email for most of this. It's just an email app, and Spark Email has its own undo send feature. So I have it set up with Gmail, but I hardly ever send emails from the Gmail app itself. But in any case, yes, I have undo send on all of my stuff.
Yeah. So do I. Mostly. It's one of those things where you're like, I don't know, like, why can't I? Like, I see some folks in chat, like, you just read over it, and when you know you're certain, but there, you click it. But there's something about, like, how many times has undo send saved me? Because the second I click it, it's like I can't explain it. It's like my brain shifts from what I was seeing before to suddenly recognizing these things that I completely missed. And there's just something about that shift from like, all right, I'm done. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm not. Now I see this thing. And it's saved me so many times. So I'm all about this feature. I think this is the right way to go. Instead of an edit tweet, which they're not rolling out, which some people have called for, I always thought that was like, I don't know that works for the Twitter thing. But the undo send is perfect. Like, I love that.
Yep. And then the last kind of big feature is one called reader mode. And the way that reader mode works is, because I thought it was just for when you click on a link and it takes you to a site, and then the reader mode is kind of set up, but that was not what this is. Instead, when you are viewing threads, it will let you turn on reader mode, which kind of removes all of the extra cruft in the UI. So the individual reply and like and all that kind of stuff goes away. So it's just the text and the photos that the person has included in the thread. So you can just easily read through the different tweets that they sent out without having all that stuff in the way. So I think that's a really cool thing. I'm kind of bummed for everyone on Twitter that's not a feature that's just available to everybody, because I think that would be one that's beneficial and more accessible to folks. So that one, more than anyone, I'm like, man, I don't think that should be a premium feature. That should just be a feature. But that's an aside. The last thing is that there are some color theming and app icon adjustments that you can make. So you can sort of change the color of the Twitter app icon on iOS, and I'm not sure about it on Android. And then color theming, so you can set up Twitter to look how you want it to. Now, the last thing to understand or to know is that this is rolling out in Australia and Canada first before they bring it elsewhere to give it a go, see how it goes, kick the tires on the thing, etc. It'll be $3.49 a month in Canada and $4.49 a month in Australia, which of course are adjusted for the currencies there. So yeah, anybody in Australia and Canada, you can sign up for Twitter Blue and provide feedback to see if there's anything else that you would like to have added or you'd like to have adjusted. But I will probably be subscribing to this when it comes to the US, just because A, I like to, check out all the new features. But B, there's some good stuff in here that for me, as a person who does use Twitter all the time and tries not to complain about, being there despite myself, I will take advantage of these things.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I've kind of gone through this with my Google Photos account as well, gone through the arc of this. At the end of the day, when I look at how I use the internet and the services that I use, and more importantly, the services that I absolutely rely on, like the ones that I use multiple times every single day. So obviously there's some value there. More and more, it's kind of like, okay, so $2.99 is expected to be the price of Twitter Blue when it comes to the US. Like, I feel for me, I should be okay spending that because I use Twitter and have for years. Like, why not? Same for Google Photos. I actually have a Hands on Tech that went up yesterday that's all about moving your Google Photos library over to a Synology NAS to do self-hosted thing. And I mean, even there, I say in the piece, like I'm sticking with both. Like I'm going to do both because that's a true backup solution. Then I'm backing up here and I'm backing up to the cloud. But B, like Google Photos has been an amazing app. So has, and Twitter has been an excellent service. As much as I've had issues with the, certain moments of Twitter, and really that's less the service and more kind of what's going on the network, but why not? It's like $2.99 a month for a service that I use all the time. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm cool with that. You mentioned something about this reader mode being a feature, though, that would be good for everyone, and I would kind of say they all kind of fall in that category. If Twitter had wanted to, they could have just released these as extra new features in the Twitter free service. And it would have been like no one would have batted an eye. It would have been like, oh, those are great new features for Twitter.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in their choice to charge for these things, not questioning whether it's worth it, because I will do it. I will support Twitter in this. But I'm interested in their rationale, their reason why, hey, we got to charge for these features instead of just improve the feature set that's already there. Is it because they're not making as much money as like a Facebook is off of ads, off of directed advertising? I don't know the answer, but I'm curious about that.
That's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how this all goes and how long it takes to come to the US. Twitter just recently opened up verification again, which by absolutely no understanding to me at all, they declined Jason's verification request, which is just bonkers. I don't get it. But they ended up having to close them down because they got overwhelmed, and they didn't give a timeline, and they're already back open again. So Twitter's moving pretty fast on that. Makes me wonder if they'll move fast on this as well to see it coming to the US. So we'll find out.
I will tell you, Mike, I was not surprised at all. I kind of
shocked me because you've got so many followers and it just doesn't make any sense.
They've got certain restrictions on what they qualify as a verifiable person.
I wonder if you were at CNET. If you had been at CNET when you applied, if that would have made the difference. Because that was for me, totally. I was at a news organization at the time, and we had, the personal contact with Twitter, and that's how I ended up getting verified with my far fewer followers. So I do wonder if it's stupid, but I wonder if that's what made the difference.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I started on Twitter when I was at CNET. I worked there from between 2005 and 2010. I was early on the Twitter train. But I think back then when they were doing verified, podcaster wasn't really something that they were as clued into as they were journalists. And that I think is the distinction. Now they have in their verified, this is totally off topic, but now they have in the verified process a podcaster section. But I opted to fill out as a journalist because I had the pieces that I had been writing for Debugger. That still didn't qualify. But the reason I didn't do podcaster is because if you do podcaster, they require you to have some sort of like official reference, like a Wikipedia page, which I also don't have. I used to have one of those. I had one for 3 years and then it was removed with no real good reason. So So who the heck knows? I'm just like, you know what? At this point, I'm used to it. It's at the end of the day, how important is it? It's really not that important to have a blue check. But I'm just really curious about it. Like, okay, well then what does it take? Because this seems like it should work. Anyways, is what it is. I still love you, Twitter. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. Go there and subscribe to our audio and video feeds, or jump out to YouTube and subscribe there.
And folks, if you would like to get our shows completely ad-free, you should check out Club Twit. For $7 a month, you get every Twit show with no ads and exclusive access to the Twit Plus bonus feed with extra content, plus what is definitely one of the most popular features, access to the members-only Discord server at twit.tv/clubtwit. That's where you'll head to subscribe for $7 a month. Check it out, especially that getting to hang out in the Discord. We've got some great folks in there regularly commenting. And I think it was just the other day on Windows Weekly, it's becoming kind of a regular feature where they will take questions from the audience during the show. And those come from the Twit member Discord, plus several very active hosts in the Discord across the whole thing. My co-host on iOS Today, Rosemary Orchard, is very active on the shows. And if you would like to follow me online, or send me a message or what have you, you can find me at Mikah Sargent on pretty much all of the social media networks. Or you can, and also you can check out my shows. I will be recording Smart Tech Today here very shortly. Today, Rosemary Orchard will actually be joining me as Matthew Casanelli is out. So it'll be an episode of STT that's a little bit like iOS Today. And then tomorrow, Rosemary will be back for us to record iOS Today on Friday. So check out those shows and join Twit Plus. Or Club, I always say Twit Plus, but I mean Club Twit. Join Club Twit. What about you, Jason? Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me. I'm on Twitter, as I was just talking about, at Jason Howell, if you want to find me there. I'm also here on the Twit Network doing shows. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I published a hands-on tech episode yesterday, all about my experience taking all of my Google Photos library and moving it over to a Synology NAS to see if what the experience was like, the process of that, how it is after the fact, like accessing it, and how it compares to Google Photos and everything. I think it's an eye opener, and I hope that you enjoy it. So twit.tv/HOT to go check out Hands on Tech episode 144 is the one to look for, and you can find my experience there. Big thanks to John Ashley and Burke at the studio for helping us do this show each and every week. We couldn't do it without you guys, and we couldn't do it without you watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands on Photography, here on Twit TV. Each and every week, Thursday that is, I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.